ask you a question from a psychological standpoint. Is it helpful to diminish your opponent before fighting him? And when you have basic trash talk from a guy who is not creative and or clever, you are going to hear kick his ass. I'm going to kick his ass. You're going to hear these things, and it's boring, and it's lazy, and it's not interesting. It's part of the fight game. It's part of it. You're going to have to put up with it. I'm asking from a psychological standpoint, is that something that's going to resonate with you, the customer, who's going to stop what they're doing, give a couple hours of their life, kick in some money? Does that, I'm going to kick his ass? Because what if you're right? I've heard people trying to get a fight saying, I will stop him in less than 2 rounds. And I always wonder as a customer why you think I'd want to know that. But why would I pay $50 for 7 minutes of action when I could have 25 minutes of action? Like, why do you think you stopping him in 2 minutes, maybe there's an answer? I'm just sharing with you, if you do that, is it a good thing? This got tested one time. This got tested on accident in a professional wrestling circumstance called WCW. Ultimate Warrior had taken on Hulk Hogan for Vince McMahon. Was the biggest match of all time. It was very unique because the Warrior was the Intercontinental Champ. Hogan was the World Champ. You never had those guys wrestle. You had a whole division and a whole TV program and angle for the Intercontinental title. Then you had a whole nother one for the World title. You never commingled them where one guy's got 2 straps and all of a sudden you don't get to put a championship up on the line. It just hadn't happened. So it was a very big deal when it did. And Warrior got over on Hogan. At that point in Hulk Hogan's career, Hulk Hogan had only been pinned clean 3 times ever. And the first one is before anybody knew Hogan was going to be a star. So Hulk Hogan in the modern era, when they're on television with the red and the yellow, say your prayers, take your vitamins, had only been pinned 3 times clean. Clean means where, like, the referee wasn't distracted and then some manager hits him with a steel folding chair. A clean, you beat me straight up in front of the world 3 times. So it was a very big deal that Hogan put Warrior over, which he didn't have to do. Hogan did it not only because it was best for business and Vince asked him, and they saw something tremendous in Warrior. Hogan also wanted a break. He was tired. On a personal level, he was tired. Anyway, share that story with you because in 1999, Hogan has left the WWF. He's over in WCW. He's running out of things to do, and they bring in the Ultimate Warrior. So the Warrior gets in the ring, and the Warrior, rest his soul, was very classic for being very unaware of himself. There was a tremendous arrogance to how long he would keep a mic and be on live TV. They would tell him, go out there, have a 4-minute segment, and he would stay for 12 minutes knowing it was live. Knowing they're not going to take the cameras off. No, it's called going into business for yourself. He didn't give a goddamn about everybody in the back who's waiting for their opportunity, how the show was being ran, where the commercials and sponsors, when you got to fade to black and roll the credits. He didn't care about anybody but himself, and he would hog this time. With his first face-off with Hogan, which is tremendous because we haven't seen Warrior in almost a decade, and the mere fact that we could get Hogan Warrior 2, if you're a pro wrestling fan, it was unbelievable. It was a dream match. Warrior came out, and in that interview, tells the world, many of which weren't there. Many people were not even watching wrestling the first time those guys wrestled. He tells the world that they wrestled, and he informs the world. He's face-to-face with Hogan and tells him, just like the last time we wrestled, and I pinned you 1, 2, 3. Well, now Warrior's ruined it. He just told the world the outcome. Why on earth are you going to watch a movie or read a book if you know how it ends? It was a tremendous mistake. Now, even though that was scripted, the lessons from a psychological standpoint, and that's what I'm trying to ask you about, they still carry over. Is it lazy to say I'm going to kick a guy's ass? Yes, it is. Is it part of the game? Sure. Are you convincing him? Are you convincing the audience? Are you trying to convince yourself? Yes, yes, and yes. But then you have the more creative call-outs, and you have the more creative challenges. And if you ever start to say this guy's only showing up for a paycheck, just by example, well, that's his job, dummy. Of course he's coming for the paycheck. If you say you're going to stop him, that actually got tested on accident back in the Mike Tyson days. They would bring in bums, in all fairness, to fight Mike Tyson, but Mike was also so much better, it wouldn't get out of the first round. And on a boxing card, much more so than MMA, where there's only one match. None of us know or even care to know the first, second, third, fourth, fifth fight on a boxing card. There's never been a card in history where the co-main event was worth a goddamn. You could not name a co-main event that you've ever seen or you ever looked forward to seeing. That's the boxing model. But my point being, when it's main event heavy, and in the pay-per-view business, one guy's got satellite, he calls up 3 or 4 friends, they're kicking in some money, somebody brings the pizza, right? Somebody brings the ice, somebody brings the soda. I only share for you that if you're getting together for this one moment, and in Tyson's case, it's less than 3 minutes because he's so devastating and so dominant, it's a bad thing. And it was bad to the point that Don King, in conjunction with DirecTV, the top satellite provider at that time that carried Mike Tyson, had to come up and tell the world, we're going to charge you $50, same as always. But if Mike doesn't leave the first round, we will cut your bill in half. When you get your monthly bill, the computers, we will automatically cut that down to $25. They were worried that no one was going to watch Mike, and they were right. People were giving up on Mike. You get a party, you get everything together, you got the boys over, you got to clean your houses, all these stuff, you have less than 3 minutes of action. It turned out to be a problem. So when somebody comes out and they think they're doing themselves a favor, and they say when they're going to stop their opponent, there's a time and a place, particularly if they're the underdog. If you're a dog in this fight, it's particularly relevant. Mike Tyson couldn't say those things. Don't tell anybody you're going to whip this guy's ass. We don't want people to know. We bring you bums because that's what we do in boxing, but we can still fill up theaters because you two dum-dums that are going to hit each other aren't very much smarter than our dum-dum fans, so we're going to coordinate and plan with all of them, but the people that are at home and have a satellite dish do have a different level of intelligence, so let's go cut a deal with them. I mean, it was the weirdest thing in the world, but it was real and it happened and there's a lesson in it. You got to take that with you. If you're ever going to go through this business, you got to study everything about it, and that is one lesson that was taught. I firmly believe there is a way to pick a fight, and I firmly believe there's a way to promote a fight, and they're not the same. The things that you would do and say to get the contract are not the same things that you take with you once you have the contract. Because you do always run into the problem when you're trying to talk tough of having audience members who believe you. If the audience believes you, there's nothing to see. George St. Pierre, the greatest fighter this sport's ever seen, and any discussion, quite frankly, is silly. George St. Pierre is the answer. Nobody could beat him. Nobody could win a round against him. George could not mislead or convince the organization, the opponent himself. Nobody could captivate the audience to believe anything was going to happen other than George was going to win. But opposite of everything we know about promotion, it's still sold. George was still a marketable, bankable commodity. Very rare. He's the only one where you know the outcome and you turn in anyway. But George didn't want that. And George would go to press conferences doing the opposite. The opposite. Of course, I'm going to beat this guy. I beat 3 guys that have beaten this guy. I haven't lost a round. I'm the world champion. He would never do any of that stuff. He would build up the opponent. And a lot of people thought George was doing that purely intrinsically to try to take pressure off of his own shoulders. That was a piece of it. You weren't wrong to identify that. But a larger part is George thought it would be bad for business. Why is anybody going to tune in? And quite frankly, George is right, historically speaking. Nobody has ever tuned in when they knew how it was going to end. There's only a couple of athletes in history, not just the fight game. There's only been a couple of athletes. Mike Tyson was one of them. Michael Jordan was the other one, where his greatness was so special, it didn't matter the outcome. You were expecting greatness, you were expecting dominance, and you're willing to pay and part with your time and money to witness it. George was cognizant of this, so George would always build the other guy up. Oh, he's got the most dangerous jiu-jitsu in the world. Oh, he's got the most dangerous boxing. I've been working with Freddie Roach. I'm going to try to counter that. He's got the most... George would go out of his way to build the guy, opposite of what most guys did, opposite of what I'm inclined to tell you to do, but it's what the biggest draw in the sport did. I can't give you the answers. I know them, but I can't give them to you. I just can't. You got to work for it. But I'm leading you there. And I leave you with one tip. the way that you pick a fight is different than the way you promote it.